Howdy, guys. So this is really, really, really big news. And what's happening here is something that's absolutely incredible, which is that SSI is trying to figure out a way through the SSA, the Commissioner Kijikazi, Social Security Commissioner, to reduce the harm that comes from this terrible, terrible rule with supplemental security income. There's this evil, horrible, no good rule, and it is called the in-kind support and maintenance rule. That's where if you are receiving assistance from somebody, food, mortgage, rent, whatever, they basically have ways to reduce your SSI benefits. And so the way it works is that if you were to receive the maximum amount of SSI benefits for 2023, it would total $914. But if somebody's assisting you, this in-kind support and maintenance, right, then they can reduce your benefits by around $324.64. And that leaves you, with SSI only totaling around $589.36. As you know, people can barely live on $914 a month if they have to pay rent and things like that. It's almost impossible. But then reducing them even further is essentially almost evil. And what it comes down to is that you can't live on $589.36. And that's what people are pushed to in 2023. And what that is basically, the $304 plus $20 to create this reduction. Now, the reduction is applied heavily by the SSA. And what the SSA is trying to do through Commissioner Kijikazi is get rid of the food limitation. So if somebody, claims, hey, somebody's helping me out and giving me food, right, then automatically the SSA is usually applying what's called this in-kind support and maintenance rule. So now, if you were to do the math and you were to go ahead and say, okay, what's $324? And here, we'll do it right now. Let's pull up a calculator. If you were to go ahead and pull up a calculator and you did, all right, so let's say $324, right, and 64 cents times 12, you would lose $3,895.68 every year just because you said, hey, somebody's helping me with food. And as a result of that, what kind of comes from all of that is that people are basically in a starve situation. So as you know, food prices have rampantly gone up as a result of just terrible, out of control inflation. And the calculations that they do to, increase your benefits each year, the cost of living adjustment, they're just not realistic. They're just not fair. They're not equitable for what the price increases actually are. And so as a result of that, where we end up is in this terrible place where people who are on the program of last resort, supplemental security income, they can't afford anything. And so there's this rule where if somebody's helping you out, the government doesn't have to pay you as much. That's the idea. Somebody gives you other stuff and the government doesn't have to give you as much money. I'm going to read to you specifically from this rule that comes from the SSA's submission to the Federal Register. It is located in document citation 88 FR 9779. It is page 9,779 through 9,796. It's a total of 18 pages. This is located in the 20 CFR 416. Let's go right to it. This is directly from the submission made by the SSA of their intention to get rid of food as a calculation option for reducing your benefits if you're on SSI, which means that if President Biden were to release a fourth stimulus of $1,000, or let's say $600, or maybe $1,200 or whatever, in this instance, if you were really, give you a stimulus, fourth stimulus of, let's say, $1,000, changing this rule for many SSI recipients would be around 4 times as much in worth over the period of a year than that one little $1,000 stimulus. So this is larger than a fourth stimulus, significantly larger, almost 4 times larger. So for those who are on SSI, this is probably going to be the best thing that happens to them in 2023 by increasing the likelihood of their benefits to the maximum from this 1/3 reduction rule application. All right, I'm going to read to you specifically the summary from their submission. We propose, that's the SSA, to update our regulations to remove food from calculations of in-kind support and maintenance, ISM. We also propose to add conforming language to our definition of income, excluding food from the ISM calculations. Accordingly, supplemental security income applicants and recipients would no longer need to provide information about their food expenses for us to consider in our ISM calculations. We expect that these changes will simplify our rules, making them less cumbersome to administer and easier for the public to understand and follow. These simplifications would make it easier for SSI applicants and recipients to comply with our program requirements, which would save time for both them and us, and improve the equitable treatment of food assistance within the SSI program. The proposed rule also includes other minor revisions to the regulations related to income, including clarifying our longstanding position that income may be received constructively. Okay, and then they go ahead to define that term below. So what does this mean? It means that the SSA is trying to save money from not having to process that information. They're trying to fix the problem, which is that SSI people don't have enough money for food. There's been a very poor effort on behalf of the current administration to go ahead and control more effectively this whole inflation problem. And ultimately, as a result of that, they need to find a way to keep SSI people above basically starving. That's what this rule is about. Now, as we go a little bit further into this submission, what we're talking about here, and you need to know two things. The first is the VTR rule. That's the value of the 1/3 reduction. Okay, that's what that stands for. VTR, the value of the 1/3 reduction. That's where they reduce the benefits by 1/3. The VTR rule applies when an applicant or recipient lives throughout a month in another person's household and receives both food and shelter from other living people in that household. Okay? Others living in that household. Now, what they're saying is we want to take out food. They don't want to have food as a part of the calculation. Under the VTR rule, we reduced by 1/3 the applicable FBR, federal benefit rate. Because the FBR for 2023 is 914 for an individual and 1,371 for an eligible individual with an eligible spouse, when we apply the VTR rule in 2023, we reduce the SSI benefits by $304.66. Now, I thought when I calculated it, it was supposed to come out to that plus $20, being $324.64. But they're saying here that would only be $304.66 for individual and $457 for the couple. This means the maximum this individual could receive in SSI for that month is $609. All right, so I calculated that's a different number because they're supposed to do this $20 calculation in there as well. And they may have not put that into the math here. This amount is calculated and applied before we look at certain other factors, such as earned income, which could further reduce the benefit amount. So under their math here, right, we take 304. Oh, Patrick Hardy, thank you for the $5 donation. I really, really appreciate it. That's super awesome. Thank you. That's really, really cool of you. Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll take their calculation here, right? And let's say that they were to reduce your benefits by 304.66. If you take 304.66, right, and you multiply that by 12, you end up at $3,655.92. So let's say Biden were to do a fourth stimulus for $1,000. This would be, 3 times that and a half, right? So, I mean, plus a little bit more on top, which is just incredible. Like, people don't realize how much of a huge increase this would mean essentially to those who are starving and on SSI. Now, remember, I know that people are going to argue in the comments, and I get this, that the main push that we're receiving from the administration is probably more so based on essentially, immigrants and refugees coming to this country and directly going on to SSI. And that as a result of that, they're trying to boost the benefits that, some of these rules don't apply to them. I get it. I understand. But you have to understand something too. There's a lot of different rules that apply for SSI to those individuals. But we'll do a video on that as well. All right. So with that said, you also have to know what the PMV rule is, the presumed maximum value. The presumed maximum value rule applies when an applicant or recipient receives ISM, but the VTR rule does not apply. Okay. So ISM VTR rule. Okay. This means we apply the PMV rule when, so PMV stands for presumed maximum value. Okay. Presumed maximum value. Like that's the presumed max that they can go ahead and look at. And then ISM is the in-kind support maintenance rule. That's like the general rule that this all falls under. Okay. So remember the PMV and the ISM. In other words, the PMV rule would apply when applicants or recipients live in their own household, but someone else helps them with food, shelter, or both. They live in someone else's household, but only receive food or shelter, not both, for the household in which they live, or they live in a non-medical institution as described in 20 CFR 416.1141. So they're describing basically when they can reduce their benefits: food, shelter, their own household, somebody else's household, or in a medical institution that's described in this other statute. Okay. Now, with that said, under the PMV rule, the presumed maximum value rule, any food or shelter received is presumed to be worth a set maximum value unless the applicant or recipient rebuts this presumption. The set maximum value is 1/3 of the FBR plus the amount of the general income exclusion, which is currently $20. Therefore, when we use the set maximum value under the PMV rule, we reduce SSI benefits. Okay, cool. So here we go. My calculation was 324.64. Theirs is 324.66. We reduce SSI benefits by 324.66, 1/3 of the current. All right, so that was correct. My original calculation was off by 2 cents, but they just rounded. Okay. Now, with that said, what we're looking at is, so anyways, they reduce it by 324.66. And then applicants or recipients can rebut the presumption that the food or shelter is worth the set maximum value. So let's say that basically you claim that somebody was helping you with shelter, somebody was helping you with food, right? You can rebut it and say, no, this is what it's actually worth. You shouldn't hit me with this maximum reduction. You should only hit me with this smaller reduction. But let's call it like it is. Food is so expensive that it's easy to spend $324, just easily. It's so easy to spend that just on food. And then rent, I mean, if you have a single room anywhere, it's like $500 no matter what. So there's almost no way to beat, like they've got you beat before you even start to try and beat this rule. Okay. If applicants or recipients successfully rebut that presumption, reduce their benefits by a smaller amount or not at all. Note that the $20 general income exclusion does not apply when we use the VTR rule. All right, so basically you've got the two options there, the 304.66 or the 324.66. Okay. Now, with that said, right, now that you understand that you could potentially, rebut it, fight it, whatever, that particular rule, the problem you're going to run into is that they've made it so that you have to provide some sort of platform, forecast, schedule, actual payments, whatever, as to what this other person is giving you. So you have to have some sort of, like build the claim, show the reasons why, here's the math, here's the receipts, etc. And remember, they might fight you a little because some of these things you just kind of make up. Like, what's the room worth? Well, the person you're renting it from can make up a number just like you can. So you get into that whole thing. Okay. To rebut the presumption that the food or shelter provided is worth the maximum value, the applicant or recipient or the applicant's or recipient's representative payee must provide evidence showing that either, one, the current market value of any food or shelter received minus any payment that someone makes for them is less than the PMV, presumed maximum value. Or two, the actual amount someone else pays for the applicant's or recipient's food or shelter is less than the PMV, presumed maximum value. The applicant, recipient, or representative payee has 30 days to submit evidence of a lower amount. I disagree with the whole 30-day rule, but that's another video. Okay. If the evidence is not provided, we calculate the applicant's or recipient's ISM using the set maximum value. Now, technically, you can claim that it's not correct at any point. You can go ahead and submit at any point, and they're going to have to check in with you and go through the process with you anyway. So, but this is more about 30 days to get it right before the first check goes out, even though nobody ever gets it really that quick, but just nobody really does it like that. Okay. Now, when applying the PMV rule, we consider whether ISM is provided, right? So ISM, okay, and we covered that. And just to go through the three rules you need to go again: VTR rule, value of the 1/3 reduction rule, ISM, in-kind support maintenance rule, and then of course you've got the PMV, the presumed maximum value rule. All right, when applying the PMV rule, okay, presumed maximum value, we consider whether the ISM, in-kind support maintenance rule, is provided by someone inside the household or outside the household or both, the number of people in the household, and whether the applicant or recipient is unmarried or part of an eligible couple. So there's eligible couple rules as well. They're little caveat rules. ISM calculations, the in-kind support and maintenance calculations, under the PMV rule, right, account for these factors to determine an applicant's or recipient's pro rata share of the total household operating expenses. Okay. Once we have determined the pro rata share of the household operating expenses, we then consider the applicant's or recipient's contributions towards those expenses. The difference between the applicant's or recipient's share of the expenses and the applicant's or recipient's contribution toward those expenses is the amount in which we reduce the applicant's or recipient's benefits for ISM. So put another way, what we're talking about is basically, a situation where they offset it. They're looking at, okay, well, how much is this person really giving this person? You can get into the battle with them. It takes a little while. You have to go through it, but usually you'll not complete everything that needs to be completed within that 30-day period to submit to them unless you really have your stuff together. Some people try to hire an attorney to do this stuff, but then they got to pay them on the hourly, and then it kind of defeats the point of saving money to save money. Okay. Now, with that said, there's a couple of things I want to go through here. This is a proposed change. This is not de facto, this is not law. This is not like, a ruling. This is not a definitive thing. It's a proposed change that's been submitted to the Federal Register. It is very unique because we would never see anything like this with Commissioner Saul, in my opinion. Commissioner Saul is the prior commissioner under the Trump era. Right now, we have Commissioner Kijikazi. Commissioner Kijikazi has been doing a lot more things for the claimants, which, we haven't had a commissioner for a little bit, a little bit of time that has been so pro-claimant, which I think is very, very good. I'm just going to read to you the summary headlines as to why basically, there's justifications for doing this. The first one is to reduce the amount of program rules an applicant or recipient needs to understand. I think this is interesting that they put this first because none of the SSI applicants understand all the rules. None of the SSI applicants understand most of the rules. None of the SSI applicants understand half of the rules. So the bottom line is it reduces one of these ridiculous rules, and it's a rule that really hurts them. So, and it causes a lot of overpayments too. And I think that one of the interesting things is, will this rule go back and get rid of those overpayments that were created as a result of them charging people because somebody gave them food? Leah Baker, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. That's super awesome. You just did the super chat, which is super cool. Thank you for the $4.99 donation. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. So the next thing on here is to reduce the amount of information that applicants or recipients must report. So as you know, many of the things that happen in your life need to be reported to the Social Security Administration. If you're on SSI, there's a zillion financial things that you have to report to them, like when somebody gives you something of value, when you maybe get an extra vehicle, when you basically get a life insurance policy. There's all these little things that you have to report, including if somebody gives you food. And what they're looking for is they're giving you food and then they can reduce your benefits through this in-kind support maintenance rule. Well, under this change, you would no longer need to report it. What's interesting is that President Biden originally wanted to make a lot of these changes by getting rid of in total the in-kind support maintenance rule, whereas this specific thing that has been submitted by the SSA is only to get rid of one part, but it's a major part, and it's an easy rule to violate, and then basically either owe an overpayment or just they're going to have to reduce your benefits by 1/3. So as a result of all that, my big thing with this is saying that this is probably the best thing that's going to happen to SSI in 2023 if it is actually passed. It has been submitted to the Federal Register. It is linear with the original agenda of President Biden in his pre-White House website. I think this is going to potentially roll in that direction. Now, if President Biden were to get this through for SSI recipients, that would be his first major change/win, like major financial policy change for supplemental security income benefits that, on a very large scale affects essentially the SSI recipients' ability to get the maximum amount, right? The 2023 $914. So as a result of that, this is one of those things where, if he were to get this through, and remember, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's said nowadays. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's said, like how they're going to mass fund this particular group because of something that happened in the past, or they're going to, do this and this in space by this and this date. There's a lot of things out there that are not actual goals that can be hit, that can be, achieved and things like that. And so, people get their hopes up, these promises get made, etc. But you don't usually see a formal large submission like this from the Social Security Administration that is part of that whole political game. What you'll usually see are politicians at the highest level, your House speakers, your senators, your president, right? saying this is what they want to change, saying this is what they want to do. But then it doesn't usually come from the agency as a potential rule proposal change that's submitted to the Federal Register. I mean, sure, we see some like wonky off the wall, bills submitted by kind of your freshman Democrats and stuff like that, where they're trying to like, get future votes. Everybody gets that. Everybody gets that. But what's unique about this is that it essentially is a major step in the right direction of making sure SSI people get enough money. Now, for some of the people who are going to argue that all the SSI people are essentially taking their money, in the direct sense, SSI people don't draw their funds from the Social Security Disability Insurance Trust Fund, nor do they draw their funds from the Medicare Trust Fund, nor do they draw their funds from the Retirement Trust Fund. Do they draw their funds from the general taxes? Yes. Is that still taking your money? Yes, but it's not directly related to them taking what you've paid in. And remember, whatever you pay into Social Security, it just goes into this massive trust fund. It's not like it's set aside for you. There's no like little account with your name on it. All right, number 3 on this list, and we're going to go through each one of these in more detail on a further video. Simplify and shorten processing. So there was I'm going to read specifically what they had on here. As Balkos et al. Noted in a 2008 analysis, we must make a determination concerning ISM receipt for most SSI recipients, but only about 9% of SSI recipients have their benefits reduced due to ISM. So, 9% of them, ISM. Further, they note, remember, that was 2008, though. It's a little bit of an old statistic. Further, they noted that a determination may involve a detailed accounting of household expenses and the individual's contributions to establish whether the individual pays his or her pro rata share of expenses. So what they're saying is they're cutting an entire portion of essentially SSI calculations out of their approval process. So, when you go in front of like a disability judge and they approve in your favor, that's a medical approval. And then you go back to the local field office and they have to do a non-medical review. This cuts out a major portion, right? That's part of that 9% of SSI recipients from having to do this calculation system to figure out, do we give them the full amount or do we not give them the full amount? I see a question over here, by the way. Let me see where it is again. Right over here. Somebody basically asked, and I can't find it right now, how does this affect SSDI benefits? This has no effect on SSDI benefits at all. It doesn't affect it, doesn't have anything to do with it. It is only SSI benefits or supplemental security income benefits. Now, the next thing that I want you to understand, this is their point number 4 as to why they're doing this. Number 4, lead to fewer benefit recalculations and fewer improper payments. So what they're getting at here is the overpayment problem. Again, lead to fewer benefit recalculations and fewer improper payments. So I have claimants who, as a result of food and them reducing their benefits when basically they were receiving food from somebody else, they then got an overpayment for thousands of dollars, and that obviously was not good. And that overpayment is still sitting on their head. Some have begun payments on it. Some have gotten a waiver of it. But the bottom line is that it creates a much bigger drag, not just on the claimant. Remember, you're thinking like, oh man, now I owe that money. This sucks. No. Remember, that overpayment, the person that has to process it, work on it, the 4 people at the SSA who have to touch it as it goes around to the different stations, it's way more expensive just to have the SSA personnel deal with it. And that's why they are, waiving some of these lower amounts, because to deal with it, to process it, to work on it, it's just financially not worth it. And so what's happening here is they're saying it'll lead to fewer benefit recalculations and fewer improper payments, which means when they have to go look at your benefits in the future and figure out what months, this might have applied, they've got to do a recalculation schedule, right? They got to schedule out each month in which it might have applied. And then if they paid you too much, guess what? Overpayment letter goes out. It's just too much money and too much time to try and reduce these benefits for these supplemental security income recipients. Part number 6, number 5, proposal would promote equity. I'm going to read to you this section. It's a little bit wishy-washy here, but let me go through it. SSI recipients have low income and resources because low income people disproportionately encounter barriers across a range of social health and economic outcomes. Our goal is to improve their circumstances, thus improving equity by removing benefit reductions for this population. That's a White House writing right there. That's like executive fluff, right? So Susie Q, 42. Wow. Happy birthday to all the birthday people today. Happy birthday. If it's your birthday, Susie Q, happy birthday. $10 donation. I really appreciate it. That's super awesome. Thank you. So here's the thing with this. I'll read through a little bit more. The policy may facilitate increased food security. It won't be a may. It'll be absolutely, because look, even if they don't spend that extra money on food, they're not so worried about the food that they did, that they were able to afford. So it'll absolutely, without a doubt, increase food security, which would lead to an overall greater sense of well-being and better health outcomes. As well, the new process would remove a disincentive for family and friends to provide food support and be generally easier, less burdensome, potentially less anxiety-provoking. That sentence right there is complex. Let me read it again, and then let me explain it, because it's complex. If you're not in the system, you would have just read over it and been like, cool, done. It's actually super important. Here we go. As well, the new process would remove a disincentive for family and friends to provide food support. What they're saying is, when they reduce SSI benefits of people because people are giving them food, that creates an incentive for friends and family members to not give an impoverished, usually disabled person food, right? The SSI recipient. And as a result of that, it creates this overall like, well, if I can't give them food, yada, 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 that's a problem. So as a result of that, what you have to keep in mind is that they want family members to be able to give food. They want friends to be able to give food to the SSI recipient. They want them to be incentivized to be able to do that, so the other money goes farther in other ways. Okay, cool. Now, so provide food support and be generally easier, less burdensome, potentially less anxiety provoking. So we've had a bunch of details in America explaining how depression and anxiety are becoming more and more commonplace in America. And a lot of that is due to financial distress because people don't have money. This is the direct study of exactly that. Like if you were thinking about a pool of people that would be perfect to study to understand food anxiety and food depression that results from, you get really low because you just can't afford anything. This is the pool of people you would study. This is like the perfect little macrocosm, microcosm, whichever way you want to look at it, that would equate to how bad is anxiety and depression when there's not enough money. Okay. All right. Specifically, this proposed rule would promote equity by providing increased financial security to affected beneficiaries, and 2, providing consistent treatment of food support regardless of source, and 3, reducing reporting requirements and the effect of reporting an applicant and recipient, and 4, facilitating improved food security among certain beneficiaries. Great summary, really good. Bottom line is this. It makes sense for us not to nickel and dime the SSI person at the end of the day because they cannot afford to lose a nickel and dime. Now, I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, they didn't work, they shouldn't receive, and yada, yada, yada. And I get that. I get where you're coming from. But I need you to understand something. And remember, this is just a general overview of what they're trying to do here. I need you to understand something. When it comes to SSI recipients, this is the bottom base, last line resort option on the table. If we did not give them enough funds to live, they would be robbing from people. They would be starving on the street. We would have to have some other program that did a very similar thing. We'd have to have, and some people are like, well, make them stand in a bread line. I say no. But you want to create a giant bread line where all the homeless and low income have to go to every single day? Come on, that's not realistic. Have them go buy their food. You want to put more stress on the government to produce, government cheese? Give me a break. That's even more costly than you would think. So the point here is this will be, my math was off by 2 cents, but whatever. This will be essentially the largest increase if they can get it to go through as a policy change for supplemental security income in 2023. It is a major thing that was promoted by President Biden in his pre-White House website. Although President Biden shot much further than this, which was to get rid of the in-kind support maintenance rule in general, which we also call the 1/3 reduction rule. As a result of that, you have to keep in mind that you can always go ahead and submit to the SSA a loan agreement if somebody is giving you food or shelter or those things, that they're loaning those things to you. And as they're loaning those things to you, bottom line, you can have a loan agreement and then they can't reduce your benefits because you need all of your benefits to pay for things. If you guys want a copy of a loan agreement that you can use that meets all the federal requirements, you can always email me at wrh@disabilityresolution.com. Again, wrh@disabilityresolution.com. Now, with that said, when I get complex emails from you guys and you're not clients, remember 9 to 5 and then even more hours after that. Although right now I've been working on a house project because I'm trying to purchase my first rental home. But the bottom line is this, and this is crucial. If you guys send me an email and the email is super long, right? We're talking more than a paragraph to 5 paragraphs, 6 paragraphs, what it doesn't matter. And you're not a current client and you're not a prospective client, then I can't work on it. You have to call me during the live session where I donate 2 hours every Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. That's when I can answer questions for you guys. That's when I donate 2 hours every single week to the entire disabled, I would call environment, but most people would say community. So with that said, please remember, if you're going to send me an email, keep it super short, or just give me a call. But if it's a call about, you're already receiving disability benefits, yada, yada, then catch up with me on Thursday during the live show, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Otherwise, what I do throughout the entire day is essentially represent Social Security disability claimants. So I'm a disability attorney, so I have to work on the claimants or the prospective claimants, submitting motions, creating briefs, going to hearings, etc. All right. Now, if these videos are helpful and they kind of get you rolling in the right direction, or they give you updates and you like them, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving 5-star reviews. I'm going to put into the chat section, and then I'm going to put into basically the comment section how to leave a 5-star review. And then basically also something that I've been working on the side, which, I rarely get a chance to work on it, but it's something that's important to me, which is creating a class action on the mathematics that are used to essentially outline, I would say fraud in how they calculate Social Security increases known as your cost of living adjustment. And this is based off of studies created by nonprofits, some of which are in DC, that outline you should have significantly more money at this point per month, but they just didn't give it to you because the cost of living increase, the numbers have been consistently too low for what it actually costs to be able to live, which is why people feel so much more of a squeeze when they receive their Social Security benefits, which is why people don't value their Social Security benefits like they used to. Guys, I will catch you at the next video. I have to go work on a few things, but then I will be back later in about, I would say, an hour to 2 hours. I'll catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful night, and we will go from there. Thanks so much. Attorney Walter Hnot, Disability Resolution PA. All right, guys, we'll go from there. Bye-bye.